to restart theatre starting this Sunday on a 2-week trial. 60% seating capacity alone in the venue, and of course other stipulations. For example, only 4 persons who are family can be seated beside each other. If not, it's after every 2 seats you place someone, amongst other things. So we have gotten the go ahead, but also it feels very short notice, because to give us a go ahead 2-3 days ago for this Sunday, when will you get time to have markets that play, sell that play, reach out? And we're like, so am I still in a tableau, or should I move on to our next scene? That's how it really feels. And I've decided, you know what? I'm just gonna stay in a tableau and just see how this plays out first. Let this trial move on, let it happen, because also you don't want to rush into something and create debt. Theater is a business. Yes, it's art, but it's a business. So if I move too fast and I don't have the school is coming, because guess what? We're doing online learning in Jamaica. For CXC, for the exams, the fifth form exams, leaving out of high school, they now are doing in-person classes, but they feel rushed, they feel stressed. They have been doing online schooling from March, and some schools with online, they weren't getting much lessons because they don't have internet, they're in a poor area. There's so much in that. So for these students now, they're on crunch time with exams this month. I think it's middle end of this month, so in a few weeks, and they don't feel ready. Will a school want to still send them to a play when they're trying to crunch an English literature play, when they're trying to crunch maybe 8 subjects now in 2-3 weeks? So as a producer, I have to think of all of that. So am I coming out of this tableau, or am I staying for a while I figure out my next move? So that's
How
where we
was it?
are at.
Yeah. How was it? Did you had to stay at home? You're not allowed to go out. How serious were the restrictions? When did it start?
So we gradually after time kept having more and more and more restrictions. So we started with work from home. That was it. We started with 10 persons alone in a space to be gathered, and you have to be 6 feet from each other. Then we went to mask became mandatory. From you're going in a public setting, in a building, in a vehicle, you had to wear mask. Then we moved to curfew, 9 p.m. curfew at night, 6 p.m. in the morning, you get to come back out. And I remember there was the Easter holiday, we had curfew, I think from 2 p.m. you had to be in. And it depends. For example, I can say I had a complete lockdown in St. Catherine. So St. Catherine had a case, and other places in Jamaica, 3 other places, Bull Bay and somewhere in St. Mary, had a spike in cases. A breakout almost happened. So we had a call center, a BPO, that we realized that many persons had COVID-19, and that happened in St. Catherine. So we were on lockdown for 2 weeks. We could not come out unless we're an essential worker. So we were only able to stay in the parish. Then we only had 2 days to come out of our household, 2 days to go to the supermarket, 2 days, and we had to come out based on last name, initial. So I'm a Walters. I think we went out on a Saturday only. That's where it went to the mark. And then we had a time like from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. if memory serves. That was our time to come out of our house. And then we went back in and we stayed. And that happened for like 2 weeks. So I remember Bull Bay, for example, their lockdown, I think, was even more severe. The government literally brought food for them. They could not leave their community at all because they had one of the worst cases. The lady who came from America, I think she came from, let me not say the country because I could be wrong. She came from overseas, and she hopped all over Jamaica not knowing she had corona. Went to a funeral, and it was a big breakout. That was our first case. And that sent the country in panic because everybody was she around me? Was she in my parish? Was she in my community? So it was a lot. So now we're still on curfew, but we're a little later with curfew, like it's 9 p.m., 11 p.m., depending on midday, weekday. And we St. Catherine, for example, now I can go to other parishes. We're there now. We just reopened our border. We just reopened tourism recently. And there are debates about, is that too quick? we are now, our cases are imported, and by opening tourism, we are bringing in more cases. But then the reality is persons need to earn.
Yeah.
And tourism is a main money factor for Jamaica.
Sure.
So that's the whole island debate going on, and whether it is upset, because as well, with entertainment industry not fully opened, some of us are a little bit, if more cases are coming in, will it be shutting us down longer? So that worry is there too, depending on the industry that you're in. So that's what it is like right now in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. And has it been successful? Is COVID, how strong are the cases? How many infections
Okay.
or deaths you have?
All right. So we have 715 confirmed cases so far from
In
March
all the
10th.
islands, 700.
All the island. We have 560 recoveries, which is good. So that's 78.3% recovery. Very good. So we only have 145 cases right now. So we see progress, and we're like, let's not move too fast and open the borders, please. Let's not have a second lockdown. But we're doing very good in regards. So if we look at the statistics, we are doing good. It's just for Jamaicans to take it seriously, wear their mask, practice social distancing, things like that. So because we have to play our part too.
And Jamaicans listened to the government, they followed.
Not quite, because I've been out and seen social gathering, and I'm just like, what? I'll share. Recently, I was taking a stroll in my community, and I saw two kiddies party, and I was confused. So what I say to my friends is, Corona is a myth. Something is wrong with me. I have something wrong, because when I pass and see a kiddies party with a pool, what? So things like that worry me. And as a government, of course, it's so hard to monitor all of that. I think beaches and rivers are open, but with strict stipulations, like they close at 4 p.m. and social distancing as well. 10 persons and monitoring of the beaches have been going on. Police have been there. So that's how they're doing it, to ensure that persons are practicing the social distancing that we have implemented as a country.
Well, it sounds like a successful strategy. Such a low number of cases. Of course, you're in a way an island is a little bit more protected. You don't have like New York City. There are 6 million people taking a subway every day. You know, 1 million people coming in and out of train stations, and New Yorkers are so close, live so close on each other. So everything that makes the city so great worked against us here. So, but I think New Yorkers also listen well, and but people are worried. How long can that stay?
Yeah.
So for a theater company in Jamaica, how does the daily work look like, and how is theater in Jamaica? Is it part of a community? Is it part of the fabric of society? Are you at the center? Where does it come in?
I would say there are pros and cons in there. So I say we're in the middle. So yes, we are part of the community, and yes, we're loved. But there's also the debate of some persons may think, for example, if I say I want to do theater, persons are like, you don't want to be doctor or lawyer. So there's also that that person, that maybe the respect of it as a profession. So we're still building that, but even though that is there are persons who of course love it and respect it and see the value. That's why I would say we're right in the middle of that. A daily for theater, we rehearse, for example, when I'm doing my plays, I rehearse 6 weeks for a show. I know some persons rehearse 8 weeks for a show, some persons rehearse 3 weeks for a show. So it really, on standard is normally 6 weeks. That's what we're trained to do. And running your play just depends on your product. So for example, my product runs for a month, while some theater company run for 3 months, 6 months. Our theater season is normally on Boxing Day, it opens. And that's where most plays happen during that time. I tend to do March because my company is aiming for our CXC exams, which are in June. So I try and do mine in March to be closer to the exam period, where kids need that refresher of the play before stepping in that exam. We have about, wow, I was about to say about how many playhouses we have, but no, yesterday I'm hearing that there are few playhouses that are closing. I heard about 3 playhouses in 2 days, and I was like, wow.
They will be, because of Corona, they
That's I haven't
3
really
theaters.
researched. I haven't asked as yet because I know that it's a hard time.
So how many, tell us some names of the theater, and roughly how many theater companies or theater buildings?
So let's go at the buildings. We have the Ward Theater, which is downtown, that is under construction at the moment. One of our longest theater. It's one of our biggest theater as well. We have the Little Theater, which hosts our national pantomime. We have the Little Theater, which is right beside that. We have Edna Manley College has their own theater. Then it's called
you
Studio
went to
Theater.
study?
Right. University of the West Indies, which is a college, has the Philip Sherlock Center as well. That's our next theater. Very nice lighting there. Love their lighting. So that's 4. Cargill Avenue, 2 theaters are there on that, in that vicinity. So that's what I'm at, 7, 6. Phoenix is now closed, and someone just opened one, the Johnny Place. That's a small theater holding like 140. So we have about 7 spaces so far. Normally persons use school auditoriums or just any auditoriums out there as well if you want a bigger space, and especially when you're going across island, because all I've just listed is actually in Kingston. Montego Bay has 1 theater, which is very small. I can't remember the name right now. Fairfield Theater, that's the name. So most of our theaters are in Kingston, because Kingston is a center of entertainment and life and all of that. That's where we go for all of that. But once we go out of town, persons normally use school auditoriums, or you find a venue that you can erect a stage on if there's not one, and carry a light. Sometimes it's going to be outside theater once you move out of town. Yeah.
That is quite amazing. So in this time of Corona, did you rethink? Do you say, what am I doing? Is there a way where you say what is essential? Are you rethinking the form of theater? What you will be doing? Are you influenced by this time, or do you think it's an interruption, but we will continue what we did before?
Definitely, I had to rethink a lot of things. Not just me. We had that discussion. Even Akiba was a part of that discussion. We're having on Kingston Creative. That's how do I explain them? They're a non-profit group, a non-profit artistic group, and they had a discussion last, May, about theater post-corona. Are we gonna be the same? Are we evolving? What do we think? So before I go to that, firstly, I'll say, as an entrepreneur, as a creative entrepreneur, of course, I had to rethink. I'm still rethinking a lot of things, because I'm still observing and seeing, especially with my clients being school students. I have to see what's happening in that industry. What's their way forward for me to adjust my product to assist them as well, because that comes from the Ministry of Education. I have no say there. That's the government. So what I love about, what I have to say for me personally, what was great during Corona, I was a part of a US Embassy female entrepreneur program called the AW program, Academy for Women Entrepreneurs. And Corona literally came during that time when I was doing that program, doing my business plan all over, revamping what I have, looking at my services, and I'm like, okay, this is a good period to do this right now. What is our way forward? The discussion in Jamaica at this moment, we're looking at virtual theater. So Jamaica we haven't really been doing that a lot, if at all, to be honest. I'm going in my mind to see who was doing it before, and nobody's popping up. So now with Corona, we're looking at, are we gonna stay right here and not earn for maybe a year or months, or are we gonna look at virtual online theater? And that's been a discussion that we have been having. One person moved in that space already and did something on Father's Day. I know, for example, a comedian who is also a theater practitioner, he has moved his comedy shows online, and it seems to be working very well. We also been having the discussion of TV. That's where I was still looking. that if this continues, I will bring my shows to TV for students to watch. Because what Ministry of Education was doing back in March and April, they were looking at learning from home, and they looked at TV programs. So they created a lot of TV shows for students at home, preparing for CXC, preparing for 6th grade exam, which is called PEP. And we just look at stuff. So I said, if we're continuing this, let me do this. I believe TV will fit my product better than online, because then I'm competing with all the Tempest and the To Kill a Mockingbird shows on YouTube. Why come and watch me when I can go on YouTube and watch that free? So then we started to talk about TV. We also started to talk about radio. Are we going to beef up radio dramas at this moment and get our products out through that avenue? So that's a discussion we've been having in Jamaica, just as theater practitioners. How are we surviving during this time? And also, what the methods we're using to survive, will those methods be used even more post COVID-19?
Mm-hmm. And is there government support for you? How is it organized in Jamaica, the theater?
Boy, you just touched something. You just touched something right there. Oh Lord. Mm-hmm. We're still trying to foster that government support. And there are many reasons for that. For example, theater, we still don't have an association. We start, we stop, we start, we stop, we start, we stop. So we don't have that bridge between industry and government. Yes, there are other arts forms have their associations. So the government did in March, April, I think it was in April, they did a care package where they assisted financially Jamaicans across the board, tourism, who are unemployed, this, that. But the entertainment industry, we didn't have a package for ourselves. There was a package, I can't remember what the title was, but for that package, anybody who didn't fit the other criteria could apply. And that was us. And that was the lowest money there was. We just fell in that. We just fell in the Jamaican who maybe was always unemployed. So it was tourism, businesses who lost money or had to close doors could apply for that, as long as they pay their taxes, etc., etc. So if you're not paying your taxes, you're not going to be in that. And then unemployment was a part of that. If you're with a company who is no longer in operation, yeah. But at the end of the day, most theater persons being freelancers, not being fully employed, fell in the category of the least money. So that also was a debate in our industry. Is the government supporting us? Are we gonna get some support at the end of the day? Here we are waiting. Hey. So that is still there. I'm still hoping that they would, but I guess that's why they opened up a little bit earlier for us in mm-hmm. July now, to say, hey, we can't assist the way we want to assist, but mm-hmm. here's a green light to go.
And you have health insurance through, as a health insurance for artists, as that in the US, artists don't have that. So how is that in Jamaica?
No, we don't have specific to artists. It would be that as a company, I would now reach out when I have full-time employees to get health insurance for them. But I'll be honest, I've never had health insurance as an artist. That from a company, that'd be something that I would have to do for me. Yeah.
Extra, yeah.
So we're still developing as a country when it comes on to the theater and the structures that we need to put in place. We're still developing, we're still learning, we're still having that conversation to put things in place so that artists are comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Akiba, as a question for you, I think you grew up in Jamaica and then you went to the US, work here in theater, you're so deeply involved in the Boston area. When you think about Jamaican theater, what comes to your mind?
Pantomime, laughter, and language. I migrated to the United States at 9. So that's a very tender age where you're starting to get a sense of self in the world as a child. The benefit, one of the great benefits for me is that when I left Jamaica, the culture was just saturated. The arts were everywhere. Theater was very, very prominent, very live. Music, in the Caribbean, and you'll see this also in South and Central America, the arts, at least when in my memory, and now I have to keep reminding myself, I'm 30 years removed from Jamaica. So I'm probably more American than I am Jamaican today. But so a lot of my memory is a child's memory, but the arts weren't separate from, they were not in categories. It was one, and it was a way of seeing, being, and knowing who you are. A question of access, just so many things that I experienced in the United States as an artist. We didn't really have that. The arts in Jamaica, theater in Jamaica, reggae, dance, all of it, the national dance, everything. It was as prominent as the sun, the sea, and the sand. And so I left Jamaica at 9 with the dream of becoming an actor and going on to Hollywood. And I used to beg my parents to move to LA, move from Boston. I've lived in Boston my entire time in the United States. And I used to beg them, let's go to LA. That's where I can be an actor. And all of that dreaming really comes from watching Leonie Forbes and Dr. Barbara Gludon and Oliver Samuels and so many of our legends who I just kept them with me. They're like tattooed into my being. But one thing to understand also about Jamaican arts, whether you're talking about theater or you're talking about dance or you're talking about music, the arts holds this epistemic memory and history for us. So there's just a lot of learning. If you see, in 2018, I was in Jamaica. I went to see a production called Romeo and Julie, which is an adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. It was done by a company called Jambiz. And Jambiz is it's actually the leading theater company, repertory company in Jamaica. They work out of Center Stage in Kingston. I think that's on Cargill Ave, Evoné?
No, Dominica Drive, New Kingston.
Dominica, that's correct. Yeah. So they're in what's called the corporate area, or in New Kingston. And just to kind of translate some of this for us in the States, New Kingston would be kind of like a midtown, somewhere between downtown and the financial district, so it's where the middle class and the upper middle class reside and play. So if you have a theater in that area, you're pretty prominent. So I went to see, but what this company does is they premiere their plays in Kingston and then they tour the plays around the island. So where I saw what they'll do is they'll have two companies. They have a company in Kingston and they have the touring company, and the show is running in repertory. So I saw it in one of the parishes outside of St. Andrew. Is the parish Clarendon? Gosh, I feel bad. I should know this.
Yeah,
Is it called Clarendon? Yes, I was in Clarendon and saw it, and it was in a park, and I felt like there were 3,000 people there. It was packed, and it went all through the night. But what I loved, I know Romeo and Juliet very well. It was this adaptation. I'm watching it, and I'm thinking, would something like this work in Boston? Do we have the audience, et cetera, et cetera? What I loved about the production was how much that production was not, how Jamaican it was. It was their story. It was adapted to the culture and the geography of that land. And to be honest, I looked at, and it was a lot of family. It was late in the night, but it was a lot of families. And as I looked at the children in the audience, I thought, what are they going to remember from tonight? And how much of this story are they going to feel is not theirs? And the challenge, the difference in being in the US and the transition is entering into a world where you're told that certain stories are not yours. It's interesting because Evoné talks about doing The Tempest and doing To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you look into the history of Jamaican theater, even going back, say, 50 years, 40, 50 years, you will see that storytelling is, there is a continuum without borders of stories. There aren't, these are the European stories, these are the white stories being put on by Black actors, these are the Jamaican stories. That doesn't exist, at least in my experience. Theater is theater, acting is acting, storytelling is storytelling, and they find a way to fit the form to speak to the needs and the well-being of the audience. And for me, as a person who identifies as Black in the United States, it is, it's refreshing to look into Jamaica, now, to look into Caribbean countries now, to look into African countries at this time, to see how the art is being made and how the art is speaking to the people. Because in the United States, as Black people, we're told our place. We are told what is our story, how we should tell our stories, who we should tell our stories to. We are penned in. We're penned in like animals here. So when we, myself and my business partners, go to Jamaica or go to St. Lucia or Tobago, or if we're in West Africa, we feel so free. We can watch Shakespeare and not feel like it's not ours, or that we're watching it through the lens that we are told to watch it through. It's so different. So that's where our connections with these motherlands begin for us, this wanting to attain a freedom that our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean and in Africa, in the continent have, that we don't always have. We may have prominence and position here in the United States. Frank, you know that the theaters, the nonprofit theaters just turned over, and it's leadership, and we have many people of color in positions of leadership and prominence and access, and those people are doing the job, and they're doing an excellent job, and they are making a way. And they're making their way, and they're challenged, but they're forging forward. But it's still in a box. We're still penned in here. We're still told how we have to be. And when I look at a place like Jamaica, or particularly the English-speaking Caribbean, which is, colonized at one point, we were colonized by the Portuguese and Spanish, but then the 4th of July, we talk about 4th of July, we were then colonized by the British. So that's why we're English-speaking Caribbean. And you would think that in areas like that are just so based on manners and structure and parochial being, that the arts would also be as penned in, and it's not. It's probably penned in its business structure, which there are so many opportunities for growth. And what I love about these communities is how interested they are in learning certain business practices that may, and not just, I should say, in communications practices that can just enlarge their coast. And then to move away from this us and them. I don't like the using and the theming of people. But what we're interested in is one of the beauties of Corona is this kind of melding and mushing of borders. Yeah, we see the borders close here and there, but people keep on trampling over that. We're trampling over it right now on the internet. We are, there are pigeons flying from here to Jamaica to send messages. There'll be no borders. We are interrogating this notion of borders. And we are in a time where we're told to stay inside, close the borders, protect ourselves. We have the privilege of this interrogation right now. And that is, I hate to use the word bridging, and because these are common and they're cliche, we're bridging, we're bridging. I think we're talking to each other. And we have to. We need you, Evoné, and people in Jamaica and people in Haiti. We need to hear from the people in Trinidad we need to know how you're surviving, because they are crushing our bones in this country. And we need to know how you're surviving. And you need to know how we're surviving, because we're surviving. We're surviving. Yeah, we're surviving. We're thriving. So I don't know if I've moved how far away from the question that you asked in my expressions here, Frank. But that's the connection. It was a need to reach out and to know, just like you have done, Frank. How are people doing? How are people doing? How are they surviving? And that us wanting as Black people to know about where we are in this world. Mm-hmm.
How was the experience for you as a, you say, Black woman, also a Caribbean within the Black community and a woman, and in America? How was your experience in the world of theater in the US?
Well, I found myself, I like the term that Evoné uses, the tableau. The tableau is a very active moment, an active scene, very active scene if it's done well. And yeah, I resonate with the tableau. I resonate with the tableau. But I'm kind of like a child in a grade school production in tableau who can't keep her eyes still. So everything's frozen, but I'm like, looking around.
Yes. I can see that. Like,
yeah. I know I'm supposed to be in this tableau, but what's next?
Yeah.
What's my next line? So accurate. That's happening, right? Yeah. All right. That's good. That's happening. So how is it for me? I'm going to answer as honestly as possible.
Please.
I know I'm finding myself in a seat of privilege. I'm in Boston, in Massachusetts, one of the more liberal states in the United States. We have a lot of liberties here. We have a lot of privilege here. We have challenges. We are not without challenges. We have challenges. I'm also employed at a very culturally responsible institution. At Arts Emerson, we are committed to making theater for all. We are committed to putting the world on stage. We are interrogating our history within the industry as people. We are questioning ourselves. We are standing and facing racism. We are an anti-racist, anti-white supremacist institution. And we know that even being in that position, like that's a tableau, a very difficult tableau to hold at any given time. Our leadership, the college is led by an African-American man, Lee Pelton. The institution is led, Arts Emerson is led by both an African-American man, David House, and a Caucasian American, David Dower. And we are facing ourselves and we're facing each other and we're working in the continuum. So for me, I am very privileged and lucky to be where I am. I'm at Arts Emerson in Boston, in Massachusetts, in Northeast America on the Atlantic Ocean. I have clouds. I could send you some rain, Evoné. We have rain, and rain is a blessing. So I was shocked at the beginning of the outbreak. We left work on March 11th. We have been quarantined since March 11th. And we would have weekly team meetings at Arts Emerson, and in addition to weekly staff phone calls, just to see each other's faces. And the first month, we just kept saying, myself and my colleagues, Susan and Kevin, we just kept saying, wow, we are we were feeling it, but we were feeling it, at least I was feeling it in the position of, we have a job. And right, our job, our leadership, the leadership of our theater is fighting to keep us all whole. They're not looking at where they can cut and where they can lay off people, and where they've asked us, they have done everything in their power, and they are doing everything in their power to keep us whole, to keep us whole. So for me as a Black person, sometimes I haven't fallen under that narrative of suffering, but I'm not unaware of that suffering. I'm not unaware of the fact that there are my other colleagues who are not in the position that I'm in. And that gives me just a moment to pause. Just to hold that in. I kept saying to my colleague, Kevin Becerra, you know, I felt bad in the first few weeks. So I'm not feeling any pain, because as a Black person, we have survived so many apocalypses. You probably heard this from other theater makers who identify as Black people in these talks. We have survived so many apocalypses. We're practiced in the art of surviving and moving on from apocalypses. The apocalypse of the Middle Passage, the apocalypse of being placed and misplaced and replaced on plantations, the apartheids across the Black world, whether you're dealing with Jim Crowism or you're dealing with apartheid in South Africa, or any levels of separation and breaking of our bones. So there was a part of me that's just like, I feel bad that I can't feel this pain because I'm calloused when it comes to suffering. There's a lot of calluses, so I don't feel this. So that was, that's how I was doing for a while. And then I started reaching out to Jamaica and to some of our other Caribbean colleagues, and hearing, and then listening to your series, Frank, which has been very helpful, very grounding, very grounding. Then, on top of all of this, I've been concerned about our narrative. On top of all of this, I've started a brand new company inside of this apocalypse. In the last apocalypse, which was the crash, the financial systems crashing in 2008, that signaled the decline of our last company, Up You Mighty Race. So that company started to really struggle, because a lot of the commitments to us as a nonprofit, the first to go, the financial commitments. So during that apocalypse, I wasn't in this position. And so now in this apocalypse, I'm in this position, and I'm like, can't believe I'm here. And I'm not suffering this time. I am not suffering. I have food to eat, clothes to wear, and my dwelling places are intact. Wow. So what are you gonna do next? Start a new theater. And we said, before the COVID, myself and my colleagues, Natasha McNaught and Magali Neff, we were envisioning a theater production company that would create large scale works that would tour. And then this happened, and we looked at each other like, okay, that idea is dead. We're not gonna no one's gonna pay us any mind, this is over. And then we looked up again at each other and we said, but what about the stories? What about the narratives? What are they gonna say about us? How are we gonna emerge as a culture, as a people, outside of, after COVID, when everybody is back and whole? And so we said, no, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna launch a company in the middle of a pandemic where no one can travel, and it's gonna be international. So where do we start? And we decided, so I'm gonna speak a little Jamaican here, to walk chalk line. Evoné is smiling, walk chalk line, right? My mom always taught me, she said, you know, you need to walk the chalk line, which means she would say, the poor man's children walk the chalk line by themselves, the rich man's children walk in a gang. And what that means is she was a poor woman, so she couldn't bail me out. The rich man's children could do what they want because he can bail them out. So they can be in gangs, but you will walk singular, you will walk a chalk line. And we've decided that our chalk line is the story and the narrative. And so we're gonna hold on to that line, and we're gonna walk through this pandemic, and we're gonna build our vehicle, our theater, and we are going to make connections, and we're going to hold on to this yearning, this need to find stories that reflect us as we see ourselves, not in opposition to any other groups, any other cultures, but as we see ourselves, where we're opening our eyes, where we're healing, where we're feeling. What is our story? How do we see ourselves? What do we call ourselves? What is ours? What part of Shakespeare is ours? What part of this one is ours? What part of that one is ours? Who are our playwrights? You had the great Woody King Jr. on about 2 weeks ago. That talk alone is lesson, because Woody King said it when he said, you know, it was about reflecting back to our people, who we were, and how theater makes us feel about ourselves. So we decided that pandemic or no pandemic, we still got feelings, and we gonna talk about it on the stage. So I'm well, I'm skilled, I'm nourished, and I'm ready to feed, to serve. And we are, Natasha, Magali, my partners, Evoné, we are ready, and we want to know each other. So this is such a great platform that you have here, Frank, that we can say this and talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Right, Evoné?
Yeah, actually, I love where you're going. I wanted to add something about a discussion happening in Jamaica, and you were part of it, Akiba, when we're doing the Kingston Creative Talk. That one of the conversations we're having is what's happening to live theater. And I realized that there was some anxiety with theater practitioners, what's happening to live theater, because live theater is also our lives. When we look at the art and what we want to do, we love being with the audience. We love being on stage. It nourishes our soul. And there was anxiety, persons like, are we saying post-COVID it's more virtual, it's less live? So, and when Akiba was speaking, that came back to me, our identity in the space, what we identify with as our home in the space. And live theater is very important for us. And of course, we had to, in the discussion, we had to look at it and say, that's just our fear. And someone said it best, I can't remember his name fully, which is my lecturer, my past lecturer, which is very bad. He said, theater was there before us.
Yes.
Theater will be there after us.
Michael Record. Yeah.
Michael Record. When Mr. Record said it, I said, yes, sir. You said it the best. And there's anyone listening right now with that anxiety in your soul, wondering what's gonna happen, theater was there before us. Theater will be there after us. We're just having a pause right now with us, and sometimes we need to look at why we need to pause, whether as a country, whether as an artist, whether as an individual. Find your why in the pause.
Yeah, man.
My why is I need to really look at certain things business wise. We're growing. I need to be growing in certain ways. How can I grow? What's the help I need to do? My pause is also spiritual stuff. There are many healing things I have been doing during Corona, looking at how I need to honor me better and how that's leaking into the company as an entrepreneur. You can't have certain issues you need to work through and think that that's not going to affect the company. Simply put, I'm a workaholic. Sometimes I don't sleep and I get very miserable. That's going to affect how I communicate to the staff. Simple things like that. So in this pause, find your why in your company. And it kind of, for me, what I had to work through with Corona, this is weird, but I'll be honest. I went through failure issues. This is why. I felt as if I failed my staff, which is completely irrational. It's a pandemic. But I had to work through that. Here it is that you were to do shows and to earn a salary. I hired you for this period. We've been working. I need to honor my part now. And I can't pay you. That was hard for me. I almost went in depression because of that. I had to heal through that because I take that very personally. Why? I've worked with persons already who have done shady business. And when I started Artribute, one of the reasons why I started Artribute was to increase money in my industry, increase employment, because we have what I call industry migration. We have persons who study theater, but when you leave school, you can't find a job. So you go to our next industry because you gotta survive. So when I became an entrepreneur, I'm like, I want to ensure that persons earn. That's what I'm about. And you know, that's something I'm very proud about. I'm about that. You're going to earn. Yes. And then Corona comes and I'm like, oh, okay. All shows are canceled. I can't pay. Wow. And that hit me very, very hard. I had to work through that. And it took me like a few weeks, but I worked through and I felt better. And I have to say, big up that cast. They're so loving. They're so amazing. Even today I was telling them about the talk and they were like, yeah, they're so amazing. But just to carry it back, during this pause, just figure out what you need to work through, whether it is that you're growing your company, are you doing individual work, or are you doing artistic work? Now is that time to look at how can I strengthen my skill? Because you said it, Akiba, I'm skilled. Okay, I'm a director. In this period, how can I keep growing that skill? That's what we have to be looking at. Okay, I'm an actress. In this period, how can I be better? What are my weaknesses as an actor? Oh, I don't listen enough. My nuances. Oh, my beats. You take the time now and be like, okay, let me look at this script, The Tempest. Let me look at beats during this time. Then, you know, that was my last production. Let me look at that. So now is the time for us to grow. So when the doors are open for theater and we all as a world can start to be on that stage again, our skills are so sharp.
Yeah, you gotta work.
We are ready for action. So that's what I want persons to think about.
Evoné, as you speak, you make me realize one thing. We're not in a time of famine. For the majority, there are very few countries that are experiencing a famine.
True.
We will be fed. We will have food. There are even, you know, there's food. There are people who may not have access directly, but there's food. If you put your head out your window and say, I'm hungry, I gotta eat, I didn't eat breakfast this morning, I am hungry, you're gonna get food. You need food, you need proteins, carbohydrates, fats, and fiber. You're gonna get that. You're gonna get some shelter. There's shelter out there. There are opportunities, especially right now. People don't want people on the street. So even if you got to come outside of your comfort zone and beg and be uncomfortable for a little while, you will have shelter. And there's tons of clothes. Anybody looking for clothes? I got bags of clothes. So we have food, clothes, and shelter. And by you saying now is the time in the pause. And one of the challenges that I've had is in the United States is feeling that not having the pause, not taking the beat, not taking the moment, not staying still in the tableau when the teacher said, stay still in the tableau, don't move your eyes. We're just moving. We're moving to this movement. We're moving to that. We're moving to, you got food, clothes, and shelter right now while the world is sick. The world has a thermometer under her tongue. We are all sick. Practice your beats. do some tongue twisters. Or if you're a producer, find a way to find yourself. Look at your skills. I think when I heard you speaking about that and skills and what do we practice at any stage? What do we hold on to? What do we perfect? What do we practice? I don't like the word perfect. I thought, well, people got to eat. And then the thought was, ain't nobody hungry. We're not in a time of famine, to my knowledge. Maybe there are famines, and
right. I get what you mean.
Insensitive to places in the world where there are famines. But
Sub-Saharan Africa, perhaps, still is the only place.
Yes.
Right.
Lots of has changed for the good in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a famine. There are famines happening there, and just sending the right level of awareness and positivity to those areas in the world. But in Boston, we don't have a famine. In Kingston, we don't have a famine. We can be fed. In New York, we can be fed. If you look around, it's about being aware of what is available to you at this time. Can you start anything? Can you start a business in the time of a pandemic? Can you write a play? Can you choose to, can you afford to freeze in the tableau?
Yeah.
Because some people can't. But look at the what is available to us. At the beginning of the pandemic, the minute this thing hit, I went to my old friend, Arto, grabbed the Theater in Its Double, and read the first 10 pages, which is where he talks about the plague showing up in Marseille. And interestingly, that whole the boat, the ship showing up in Marseille and being turned away, all of that happened. As I was reading it, it was happening in Jamaica. They were turning away the cruise ships with all these Jamaicans who wanted to return home because of the borders were closed. So I go back and I'm reading through Arto, and you can't just read Arto one time. You got to read him over and over because he's dense. And the moment where he talks about, just going back to what you said, Evoné, about theater before and theater after us, there's a moment in there where this cruise ship that is infected with the plague, or believed to be infected with the plague, is looking for a new port, and the minister, the ombudsman of the old port, is kind of taking some heat for sending the ship away. And then news comes that ship, the new port, accepted the ship, and the plague broke out, and he gets this, and then all pandemonium breaks out. But his port, he had denied this ship from coming in, and he then gets this moment of praise and a lot of conversation around him. And Arto says, it is at that moment that the theater begins. It is at that moment that the theater begins, in the middle of the morass, essentially, in the middle of the pandemonium, in the middle of the mess, in the clamoring marketplace, in the middle of the confusion, the tableau, it is at that moment that the theater begins. And so what is the theater that is beginning now?
What do you think? What is it?
What do I think? Can I throw that to my sister first? What is the theater that is beginning now for you in Jamaica?
Like I said, we're talking about virtual. I think, honestly, it's gonna be new things growing. Persons are gonna start thinking out of the box. How can I do things different in this space, and what is different? So I may not have specific what it's gonna be, because I think each person or groups are gonna birth different things in this space right now. That's what I think. And so we talk about the evolution of theater, the growth of theater. If we look at birth, it takes stillness, as we would say, a pause, a minute, whether it's chaos, whatever, to create something. And that's what I think is going to happen. Whether it's virtual, whatever it is, or a whole new art form, but let it come forth. Now is the time.
For me, Frank, and for my colleagues, Natasha and Magali, and for my colleagues at Arts Emerson, the entire team, The theater that begins for us now is a theater of justice. It is a theater of reparations, reconciliation, a theater of sincerity. I don't want to say truth. I say sincerity. Every move is a sincere move, a sincere action. It is a theater of claiming and forming and writing a new story. And we have an opportunity. I've heard this in the talks, and I am going to echo it. We have an opportunity right now to decide. And when I say we, I say the we of mankind, what the story is going from here on in, moving forward. Frank, when I reached out to you to suggest some speakers for the talk, you were very specific. You said, just make sure it's not male heavy. You're a man. That is the theater of sincerity. That is the theater of the story that you intentionally said, it could be women or it could be a male and woman. I don't want to talk to male heavy. Because that's the theater before the crash.
True.
That is not the theater of repair. The theater of repair says that we pay attention to who's in the room, who's talking. And that you say, I don't want to talk to male heavy. Make sure it's not male heavy. Normally, a talk like this would have the people with the highest level of visibility, right? And so the way the world was before this crash is because there was no one to say, make sure it's not this. So that's the theater of now. That's the saying, you're not just saying, well, we're diverse and we're going to represent all the voices and just get me the hottest people out of Jamaica, get me the hottest people out of, you said, you were specific. So that's the theater. That's the moment where the theater begins. This is the moment where the theater begins. When people who have access can be intentional about increasing access for people who don't. That's the theater of now. To make sure that all our stories are heard. And I hope it's also a theater of empathy, that we move forward in the world with empathy, or else we're going to keep on repeating and repeating and repeating. And it'll be a rehearsal. That's it. Just a rehearsal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is clear that things have to change, and I think perhaps they already have changed. We haven't fully seen it yet, and Frédéric, who joined us on Wednesday, who said, mankind was shocked when it found out that the Earth is not at the center, that we are actually flying around the sun. They were shocked when Darwin said, we are connected to the animals, the monkeys. Now we say the climate change will kill us. We have to see that we are part of a system, and we have to listen to everyone, the plants, the animals, but also to us, saying we are no longer ourselves at the center. There are lots of actors. That's why she likes science and theater. There are lots of actors. We have to pay attention. They might even invisible, not even through a microscope you can see a virus. And I think that awareness somehow has to be reflected. But it's easily said. You guys both also do things and produce things, and What inspires you when you look at contemporary theater work or performance work? Where do you get inspiration or ideas?
Well, for me, I kind of am always looking for medicine. So we have commissioned our first piece called The Bar Girl of Jamaica. And to work that we're developing, it's not slated to premiere until 2022. And there were just so many, as a person in the diaspora, as a person who understands just some of the history around the island of Jamaica and how it impacted the world in general. There were points in the story that I said, "Ooh, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's remedy. That's good. Yeah, okay, we can work with that." I keep looking for, I feel like I keep looking for ingredients, like a herb woman, a bush woman. I'm looking for medicine, things to draw some kind of tea with, or some kind of thing you can post it. I don't know, I'm gonna say the word properly, but the point is I'm looking for medicine. So when I look at contemporary theater, in my Generation X being, I'm looking for something that can heal the open wounds of people who were impacted by the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm looking for things like that. That's what I'm looking for, no matter who's writing it. If I think I can use that to heal these open wounds, then I'm going to try to make it, expound on it and make it get to the people. That's what I'm looking for. Medicine in the language and the form, connections to the past and visions and understanding of the now. Yeah, I look for medicine. That's Evoné.
I second that, but I go even deeper. If it's me, and especially if I'm writing, I want to say me and me outside of the company. On a personal note, I like to look at ways how persons don't give other people choices. I always say we want to have choice, but we want to take away choice. I like to let people see those aspects of themselves on a stage. When they say, "Oh, me, I am not like that," and then they see the action and go, "That feels familiar. I felt like I did that last. Oh, wow, I didn't realize I did that." That's the kind of theater I like. I call it the in your face kind of vibes. That's what I call it. And that's what I like to write about and see on a space. Just how we are oppressing each other in our society on an everyday basis.
Okay.
Whether it is race, sexual oppression, whatever it is, in every way. And that's what I like to do. I like that. That's what I think for me, that's when it comes from my spirit, when it comes from my soul. I also like to say, to show persons how spiritually unaligned they are. Just walking as unaligned people, just oppressing, taking away person's choice, taking away their voice, just taking themselves away from them. I think that's the cruelest thing you can do to an individual. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite something. So Akiba, for you, where did you study theater, or where did you get your education for management? And how was that experience for you in the US?
Yeah. I started studying theater at the Strand Theater in Dorchester, a 1,400 seat vaudeville theater, a roadhouse where the Tyler Perry, David E. Talbert plays would come through, as well as the Boys Choir of Harlem and Grover Washington Jr. And at one time it was the Boston stop for Cab Calloway and Duke Ellington. So I started studying theater there as a practitioner, and then I went and received some academic training at the University of Massachusetts at Boston, where I was in a very privileged class. We had a gentleman named Lou Roberts who taught me directing, and Lou Roberts was from that era of New York, working with, you know, in the 50s and the 60s with all the greats that doesn't come to the tongue, but is on my mind right now. And so, for example, Lou was so severe, man, we had to wear a uniform to class. Had to wear a uniform to directing. You know, if you were accepted in his advanced directing class, he had some severe rules about him. And me from Jamaica, I loved it. Growing up wearing uniforms all the time, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be serious about this. So from there, so I worked with I definitely was in a great class at UMass. In that era, there was Diane Almeida and Ron Nash, and just some incredible master theater makers. And then from there, I started Up You Mighty Race. I actually started Up You Mighty Race as Tasha and I started it at UMass as a directed study. And they gave us credit for it. And then the community loved it. And then we decided to grow the company. And around 2007, I decided that I wanted more training. And I went to La Mama, where I trained in the Director's Symposium with Ellen Stewart and Andre Sherban, Yoshi Oida, just some incredible, Petar Todorov, some incredible practitioners, Eastern European, some folks from the Peter Brook Company. And then I went back in 2009 and trained with Daniel Banks and the power. I just want to just lift up Daniel Banks for a moment.
Yeah.
What Daniel taught us, Daniel opened his session by saying, if you are going to do work that impacts young people, you must be close to them. You must listen to what they listen to. You must know what they know. You must eat what they eat. You must know hip hop. I will never forget that session. And it was, so he did a whole session on hip hop drama, but positioning it outside of the recording industry and more as a way of life. And a way of life that if we were going to be theater makers and we were going to be pedagogues of the form and we were going to be teaching artists and we're going to save the world and all this, that we had to come at it from a very frere position. You had to let the form teach you. You had to let the people teach you. So the lessons learned from Daniel, and Daniel and I remained friends over the years. It took all of that kind of really, stringent academic, you must do this, you must do that. And then it applied it in a way that I think is more sincere and more useful, or just as useful. I don't like hierarchy in anything. I don't like hierarchy. So, okay. So that's that. And then, so my training comes from, so the kind of academies or institutions would be the Strand Theater, UMass Boston, under the leadership of Lou Roberts, may he rest in peace. And then La Mama, under the leadership of the great Ellen Stewart, my mama, may she rest in peace. I spent a lot of time with Mama. If you've ever been around Ellen Stewart, you spent a lot of time with her, because she is the epitome of a sincere being. She was a gift to this world. So that is my training, and then my training is every day. So I'm about to do some training in Jamaica. We'll see what happens.
What are you going to do in Jamaica?
So we're actually starting with a series. One, we're going to be developing Bar Girl in Jamaica. We're going to do a residency at the University of the West Indies in 2021, and then linking that residency to a couple theaters in the United States. And then we are we're launching a series on August 16th called 10 Weeks in Jamaica, Theater Conversations from Jamaica to the World. And there we're going to be speaking with practitioners from the legendary founders, the people who are linked to the legendary Little Theater movement. The Little Theater movement, just to translate a little bit, is similar to the regional theater movement. The Little Theater movement would be analogous to the arena stage in the United States, and with in a just to kind of position it.
Mm-hmm.
Very different, but just giving my American listeners some perspective here.
Yeah.
But it was a very intentional movement that was, and then went on to the Little Theater movement, which the Little Theater movement would be similar to what happened with the off Broadway transition there. And Jamaica's history with theater dates back to the 16th century, where it was the pastime of the gentrified, the plantocracy, people from Great Britain, the governors, etc. And then, interestingly enough, in 1911, George Bernard Shaw visited the country and made statements to the press about, essentially how oppressive the theater scene was in Jamaica, and how it, in order to decolonize the country, you needed three things. You needed an orchestra, and you needed narrative of the people, and you needed the proper infrastructure. And he really honed in on narrative of the people, which is, you need the play to be about Jamaicans. You need the stories to be about Jamaicans. And so at that 3 years later, the Ward Theater came online, and the Ward Theater is an opera house of a little bit under 1,000 seats. And it was gifted to the country after a big earthquake, of a great earthquake of 09, Evoné. And so it is the seminal theater of the country. And Shaw visits in 11, and he criticizes the Eurocentrism of the theater scene in Jamaica. And then the Ward Theater opens, and then about 20 or 30 years later, the Little Theater movement opens, and you see what they call a racialization or a transitioning of the narrative of theater in Jamaica. So many of those legends are still alive. They're octogenarians, and they're almost centurions. And what we're looking to do is to start the conversation with these legends, and then we would go on to the playwrights, and then when we go on to the producers and the actors, and people like Evoné, the next generation leaders. So you get to hear more from Evoné, and we'll talk to the audience, and we'll talk to the students. So
it's all on HowlRound, right? You're going to do it on Sundays?
Yes, Sundays.
3 p.m. 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Yeah.
And what's the start day?
Entry. Say that again.
What's the start day?
August 16th, and it will wrap up on October 18th. So it's 10 weeks. We're going to spend. Some of us can't physically travel to Jamaica, but we're going to take you there for 10 weeks.
Fantastic. And maybe you make a great book out of it with the interviews and find something.
I just want to
we can help you. Yeah.
I want to plug a great book that already exists by Wyclef Bennett and Hazel Bennett. It's called The Jamaican Stage, Jamaican Theater. So if you want to know, I would say open this great book first.
Okay.
It's an incredible book.
Well, but these interviews will be significant, and I'm so happy that you're doing it. You archive the presence, you archive the history, and it will make an enormous contribution and raise awareness. And it's such a great place, Jamaica, being there, and it also has a lot to learn. I mean, a lot still. You can make a big contribution. I know that the gay, lesbian, and LGBT community is having a hard time for historical reasons, but it's good that theater helps with imagination, that you can imagine a different present, a different future. And theater is one of the few things that really can be doing that, as always. And we should talk much longer. And again, thank you for coming on, also on the short notice. So what advice, I mean, you gave already so much, but still, as a final question, both of you, what's the advice for young theater maker? What's the advice for our audience? What's the meaning of this time? How should we use it? Evoné, if you have an idea.
Okay, for me, going back to honor the pause. Find out your lesson during this pause, this time when you feel as if you can't move as you would want to. What's your lesson during this time? And also, I have to speak to my entrepreneurs, because I always love to find ways. This is the moment where you pull apart your company. That's what I call it. Pull apart and look deep. Find out what is missing, what is needed and start planning how to put everything together. So when Corona has passed, you are strong and ready for action. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said. Why the pause, right? Yeah.
Honor
The
the
pause,
pause,
the
yeah.
why. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Akiba.
I say take Evoné's advice. 100% take Evoné's advice. She's incredible. In the audience, I'm gonna say make noise. I need the audience to make a lot of noise because we theater makers, we are here to amplify your voices. And so we need to hear from you. Make noise.
Yeah.
Oh, forget. Frank, thank you so much for this. I've been watching also your talks with those different persons, and I've been learning so much about theater across the world. I know we've been doing this for Corona, but my God, I'm learning about structures in countries, what's going on with their government. I'm like, whoa, this is so amazing. So thank you for this platform. These discussions you're having are so meaningful. Let me tell you.
Thank you. That that does mean a lot to us, and your work is of significance, both of you, and we care about you, and we are behind you, and there's all the expressions of mankind, the utterings, to make the noise, as Akiba said. You have a drum, use your drum and use it and dance and be part, as the Buddhists say, in a joyful participation in the sorrows of life. And I think this is what theater does. We are on the side of life, and I think we more needed than ever. And what you both are talking about is very inspiring. I found it's significant, and also a tone and a message we normally do not hear. So really, really, thank you both for taking the time being with us. This week comes to a close, and next week again we will continue our journey around the globe, around the world, and you will be the first to hear it. I barely just learned it today because we finally confirmed the next one today. We're going to hear from Kenya on Monday, Karishma Bagani and Anmota and Sitava Nambali. They will talk about how to perhaps find a way to combine African history, American ideas of music and theater, melodrama, or musical with storytelling, and how they can do it as both of you said. How do we tell our own stories? How do we sing our own songs? And we don't do karaoke, which is never as good as the original. Sometimes, very few, but sometimes. But sing your own song. And on Tuesday, we have Emily Monet and Greg Hill, both from the Indigenous community in Canada. So we're going to hear from them. Emily is a great writer, player, director, but how they're doing. A Canadian Native American Indigenous women having a hard time. Still, many of them are disappearing. There's violence, and also so much hasn't been addressed of the Indigenous people of the country who were here. As you said, theater was before us. They were before the theater came, and perhaps the first pipes they smoked around this was the very beginning of American theater, and the ceremonies and the dances, the sun dances. And it's been overlooked and is a significant part of it. Wednesday, we go to Japan. Satoko Ishihara, a young writer, a very idiosyncratic, authentic a writer. I like her work very much. It's kind of a post-feminism writing performance. She performs, a solo performance of strong women. She's a hard time also in Japan. We like her very much in others, but she also is pushing boundaries. She does transgressions. I think it's of importance. Nigel Smith, who runs the great Flea Theater in New York City, and how he is going through that. He took over from Jim Simpson, who was the husband of Sigourney Weaver. He took over a theater that was not a traditional Black theater. He's a Black director. And how does he navigate the world all of a sudden? He is in charge of things, and he has to deal with things he has maybe not so much to do with, but everybody now looks at him as a leader, but he's also Black. And so what does that mean, and what does he try to make sense out of this time of Corona? And then we have Friday, Jean-Claude Van Italy. He's originally from Belgium, a refugee from the camps from World War II, and he came to America and had his first great works actually at La Mama with Ellen Stewart. He wrote the most significant anti-Vietnam play, America Hurrah, and many other things. It's a very successful writer who now moved upstate New York, created Shantiga, a farm, and things. One of the things we also have to think about is meditation, is, you know, changing ourselves and trying to see the world how it is, not just through our minds, but perhaps to get closer to it. But also, he's a great theater maker. His work on the Book of the Dead, and which might be even more significant now than before. So we're going to hear from someone who spent a lifetime in theater, in a lifetime thinking about it. So it will be, I think it will be again an interesting week. And thanks to our listeners for staying with us. We went a little bit over time, but I thought Evoné and Akiba really had significant things to say. And it's important that they know that people care, that people think this is important what you do, the knock at the wall. And Bogart said, you know, say, hey, how are you doing in Jamaica? And for you now being in, that's important for us, for you, but also for our listeners. And there's something in there, maybe what Evoné and Akiba said, that will be of significance for you to change your life in an authentic way. And we have, as both of you said, we have to change ourselves and use this pause for the why. Who are we? Where do we come from? As both of our guests said today. So it is significant. It's actually all about us. And thanks to HowlRound for hosting us, HowlRound for taking on Akiba's 10-day journey through the Jamaican theater and the living history of it. It's a great company out of Emerson. And for everybody who is wondering what significant role education plays, how universities can influence, how can connect young artists, scholars, listening to Akiba's story. And Evoné, here you have the proof. It's about transferring knowledge and then performing the knowledge. And then what do you do with the knowledge? And to be taught that you have to do something with it. It's not good enough. Because if it would be, the librarians would be the smartest people in the world and make the most money because they have all the books. But no, you have to do something with it. Even so, most librarians I know are super, super smart people, and they know and do a lot. So it's just a symbolic way. I said that again. Thank you all for listening. Thanks to my Segal team, San Yang and Andy, at HowlRound, Sia, Travis, and Vijay. And both of you, thank you for coming on our program, and have a great 4th of July. Do wear a mask. It is of significance. Yes. It does help. This is what we know. At the moment, things are getting ugly in the States, and we have still a very low percentage of only a couple of 1%, 2%, 3% of people who had this. Herd immunity would be 70%. And that would be devastating. They have the number of cases connected to it. So let's try to be careful on the safe side and prepare, as both of them said, let's prepare what I call TAC, the time after Corona. So here we go, as the great Eugenio Barber said, it was on the program, the moment when you shoot an arrow, but it's not the significant one, the moment before, when you concentrate, you think about it, when you aim, that's the moment. And so we are in one of those. So thank you all and see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.